So before you is Grace Schulze. She's an AFA candidate in the creative writing program, published in the paper Lantern if you'd like to read more of her work. What you're going to hear is a piece that she has written. This is a nonfiction memoir. She composed this past semester in Matt Mock's class, and it's entitled Reply. It has been set to Chopin's Raindrop, which is a piano solo piece, but arranged for what is now the officially four hands guitar duo. Yeah, no, for real. And they have four hands, so it's truth in marketing, right? Both of these gentlemen, Jeremy Hiniker is a current AFA in music candidate. I think he will graduate in May, is that right? Grace will also graduate in May. He is also a current, this year's Pinson Music Scholarship recipient. And Matt Vinge is an AFA and AA graduate of Normandale, is currently pursuing guitar performance at the University of Minnesota, and a former Pinson Music Scholarship recipient. So, yeah, go ahead and give an applaud for that. So they have a short performance. This is, again, Grace Schulze's Reply, set to Chopin's Raindrop by Jeremy Hiniker.
Brown feathers were sprinkled with snow, as light as confetti. Alone, he was calling to his mate, or maybe signaling there was prey nearby. This great horned owl's hoots echoed crisply across the colorless marshland. In December, everything in the marshland was brown, white, or a shade in between. There was a 2-foot layer of light and sticky snow covering the landscape that day, and under that, a sheet of ice. His voice called to another, but his eyes were locked on mine. Through my binoculars, I could see his deep, tawny eyes. He was 50 yards away, but through that magnifying glass, in his keen vision, we stood feet apart. When all other animals were tucked away in hollows and holes from the frigid wind, we both had ventured out. He was a lone figure, and about his voice filling the silent void, he could easily have been passed by. Even with my chocolate coat and brownie-colored boots that matched the scenery, he picked me out long before he knew I was waiting there. My lips were numb and chapped from the dipping temperature. The sun had a veil of clouds, preventing its warm rays from reaching us. Snow had slowly packed into my boots and was melting into cool water that ran down into my socks. He appeared unhindered by the elements, with a coat of auburn brown and white feathers, an animal unfazed by the challenges of nature and life. He stood on a thick, uprooted ash tree that was caught between the branches of a slim cottonwood. He kept calling out, and earlier I had heard 2 of them, but now there was no reply. Over and over, he kept calling. He had no tenseness or urgency to his voice. He just kept calling. I had gone out that day for bird watching, even though beforehand I anticipated that no souls would be out. Minnesota weather and the day after Christmas, who would be out? Families might have still been gathering together. The rush of presents and partying would have been slowing down. Those not celebrating would be resting at home or preparing for another year of responsibilities the world would give them. And animals should have been slumbering, their hunger filled from their efforts in autumn. They should have been bundled together and curled up with one another, waiting to make their debut in the spring. Neither of us followed those ideals of the winter holidays. I followed his voice, and he followed my eyes, my every movement, even the twitching of my fingers grasping my binoculars. Home was not far away, and I left there by choice, and so did he. His motives to leave home were probably to call out to his mate, to hunt in an empty marsh. Mine, to try out a new pair of binoculars, whose view would not be hindered by the rows of suburban houses. Surely he did not expect to find anyone else other than the one he called to. Yet, unlike other birds, easily startled by humans, he stood, unmoving, and kept calling, to no reply. How long we stood there, waiting for the other to move, to be the first to say, "Excuse me, I'll be on my way. Sorry I interrupted your day." We both stayed with our eyes locked and our bodies covered in snow. He called out, indifferent to his empty world, and I followed his call, searching for the one voice in the void. Our moment alone ended. My eyes were watering from the strain of the binoculars. I lowered the binoculars, felt the tip of my frozen nose, and looked at my father to the right of me. My dad had a grin on his face and took the binoculars from me to take a look. My dad's usual booming voice was a whisper. "We need to be slow and quiet, or we'll scare him off," he said. I nodded in agreement as the owl called out in front of us 50 yards away. I turned to the left, and on a broken maple branch, 5 feet away, and eye level to me, sat the great horned owl's mate. Her eyes glanced at me for a brief moment, and then returned to look at the other owl, who was still calling out to somebody.